it's good to note that this microphone works. That's a good start. So I have a couple of practical issues to highlight. We have no fire drill planned tonight, so if there is a fire alarm, please make your way out of the building in a calm and orderly fashion, as guided by staff. People with mobility issues should gather in the foyer on the left-hand side as you leave the chamber, near the balustrade where the assistance will be provided. Toilets are at the far end of the corridors either side of the chamber, ladies to the left as you leave and gents to the right. I've had apologies this evening from Councillors Ackroyd, Davis, Everett, Galvin, Oliver, Padder, Stootley, Vaughan, Vivian, Thomas, Young, Francis and Haynes. So we'll just move on to Lord Mayor's announcements. It falls on me to begin this evening with some sad announcements. During the summer, Norwich lost two people who have served this council in civic roles. Reverend Jack Burton served as Sheriff of Norwich in 1988-89, becoming lifelong friends with David Bradford, who was Lord Mayor that year. Jack was guided by his faith and was always one to put others first, serving our city with distinction during his Shrewsbury year. On a personal level, Jack was someone I remember with fondness from my childhood, with his and Molly's close links to our family through church. In later years, our paths would often cross at council events, and Jack would always offer a cheery welcome. Jack was well known to many around the city, with lots of people having an experience of Jack the bus driver, always willing to enjoy a chat or go the extra mile. And in the case of my grandmother, that extra mile included stopping his bus outside her house to drop her off. Chris Seelhoff, son of Lord Mayor Felicity Hartley, and welcome Felicity to the council this evening, served as her consort and really brought that role to life. With his customary humour and joie de vivre, he would light up a room and love meeting people. Chris's life was not an easy one, but it was a life well lived, and it was clear from the extra seats needed at his funeral that he made a huge number of friends during his life, and it was very moving listening to his carers speak about him. So I'd now like to hold a minute's silence while we remember those people. Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated. This summer has provided some absolutely fantastic opportunities for the Sheriff and I to attend events around the city. The Lord Mayor's weekend brought so many colourful activities to the city centre, and clearly the highlight for me was the procession, which was an opportunity to see all that is great with our city. We were given some horns and shakers made from recycled material, and I was going to bring one of the horns here today, but I feared it might actually blow the mic on the webcam because they were really quite loud. Pride at the end of July demonstrated what an inclusive city we are, and having joined the leader in addressing the crowds from the City Hall balcony, it was great to march through such a joyful city. Much of what we do as civics is about raising money for our charity, the Norfolk Community Foundation's Nourishing Norfolk initiative. And on August Bank Holiday, we had the pleasure of attending the Eaton Park Miniature Railway, where we had a ride on the first train of the day. The railway raises a lot of money for different charities during the year and raised over £750 that day. The middle of September sees the country remember the Battle of Britain, and it was an honour to welcome service personnel from RAF Marham as they exercised their freedom of the city by parading in front of City Hall. There simply isn't time to highlight all of the events this evening, but if people are interested, please follow LM Norwich on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. I try to post photos and other information about events as I attend them. There will also be a fuller list of events attached to the minutes of this meeting. I'm just now going to deal with another matter related to the cancellation of the July council. Members will be aware that the July meeting of council was cancelled due to lack of business. In his answer to Councillor Catt at July Cabinet, Councillor Kendrick was correct in his assertion that this was the decision of the Lord Mayor. However, I thought it might be helpful to provide a little more context for members. On Thursday, 22nd of June, nearly a month before the scheduled meeting, I wrote to group leaders advising them of the proposal to cancel the July Council and asked them to consult their respective groups. The consultation is required by the Constitution, as the Lord Mayor does not simply take this decision in isolation. Once I heard back from group leaders, it became clear that a majority of councillors represented were in favour of cancelling, so I wrote to group leaders advising them of my decision. I also highlighted for members the section of the Constitution that allowed questions to be asked at the July meeting of Cabinet. And at that meeting, there was 1 public and 12 councillor questions asked. I hope this clears up for members the process undertaken when a meeting is cancelled. Thank you. So we now move on to declarations of interest. Any members present have any declarations of interest for any items on the agenda today? No? Thank you. Okay, thank you. So we've received 4 public questions this evening. The first is from Ms. Sheila Gates. I understand that Mr. Paul Jackson is speaking on your behalf. Mr. Jackson, will you please ask the question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This question is on behalf of a coalition of Norfolk makers and artists known as MAC, who have come together as a collective to highlight the lack of affordable exhibition space in Norwich city centre. The collective includes the following organisations: Norfolk Contemporary Art Society, Norfolk Contemporary Craft Society, Norwich 20 Group, Breckland Artists, Art in Norwich and Norfolk, the Norwich Print Fair, Norwich Outpost, Lonely Arts Club, and the Art Pocket. We've identified a customer contact centre at Norwich City Hall as a large space suitable for regular exhibitions of work by makers and artists in the region. Could the customer contact centre or another suitable place be designated the municipal space for maker and artist exhibitions, so that a continuous programme could be created and the venue become a regional and national city centre destination for visual arts?
Thank you very much for that question. Councillor Kendrick, would you please give a reply?
Thank you for your question about the use of City Hall. This is a timely inquiry. As proud guardians of this very special building, we are at the start of exploring ideas for future use of the building. It's important to say from the beginning that this City Council will remain at City Hall, which has been in the heart of city local government since 1938. There's absolutely no plans to move from it or dispose of the building. City Hall is an iconic, historic and beautiful building, and the people of our city are rightly proud of this, for it is a public building which belongs to them and must always be preserved, protected and promoted as the seat of city power in Norwich. Secondly, we must be clear about why we are choosing to undertake this work over the future use and adaptation of City Hall. Norwich City Hall was originally built when the city was known as the City and County Borough, with full unitary powers over itself, including the provision of education, social services, but also the police and fire. Previously, thousands of local government officers used the building daily. This very wide range of services nowadays belongs in the private or voluntary sector of Norfolk County Council, and the building is therefore larger than its current uses. Another enormous change which occurred has been from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. This hopefully once in a century event, a type of emergency, led to a profound way in which people's working practices has taken place, however. We as a council encourage our employees to have the ability to work in a hybrid model, sometimes working home, sometimes being in an office, or being in an office permanently if that is what is most suitable for their needs, and of course the primary service of the needs of the service. We therefore have used some underutilised space due to this, and it is incumbent upon us to ensure that we get the very best value for the people of this city from it. We will bring in experts to help us in this piece of work. The initial stage of the work will involve putting a plan in place to progress the project. This plan will include stakeholders and residential engagement to help inform proposals for the building's future, and those proposals can be considered as part of that process. The Makers and Artists Collective will be welcome to make a contribution to this stakeholder engagement. Establishing the mid to long-term plans for City Hall will take some time, and it will be necessary to develop those plans ahead of considering any substantial changes to the use of the building. In the meantime, the Council looks forward to working with the members of the Makers and Artists Collective and their upcoming exhibitions in the Undercroft over the remainder of 2023 and into 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson, you're allowed a supplementary question if you have one.
Thank you for the answer. Yes, the problem is for local artists that they find that they can't afford the rates being charged for them, and they ask, will the council accommodate their local artists' needs? Because existing exhibition space for them to use within the city is either low profile, poor quality, or prohibitively expensive.
Thank you. Councillor Kendrick, will you please give your reply?
Thank you for that, and I do understand the problems faced by artists in this regard, and I would obviously urge you to put this forward as when we, but indeed it will shortly be the case that when we review the usage of City Hall, so that it can be considered in full. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Second question is from Mr. Cole Davis. Mr. Davis, would you please ask your question?
Good evening. I wish to draw the Council's attention to the Prince of Wales Road during the daytime. It is common to see a rough sleeping in doorways and beggars following passers-by. Occasionally, fresh piles of human excrement can be seen on the pavement. Some local residents choose to drive into the centre rather than use the Prince of Wales Road, which they consider unbearable, unquote. Who knows what it must be like to work at the shops along the street? I'd also suggest to you that visitors to the city who come by train are also likely to be affected by these sordid and intimidating scenes. The city's reputation and economy are likely to be damaged. I have come here to ask what measures you're going to take to help these people to improve Prince of Wales Road for all.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, would you please give your reply?
Thank you for your question. The Council recognises the importance of Prince of Wales Road to the city. It provides many visitors with a first impression of the city, as it's a key thoroughfare between the train station and city centre. It also remains at the heart of the city's nighttime economy, and I agree its daytime appearance is in need of improvement. As a result, a high level of environmental maintenance is already in place to ensure that it is as clean and welcoming as possible. This includes cleaning from 5:30 AM by the weekend, emptying litter bins on multiple occasions during the day, and arranging for rapid responses to reports of hazardous waste in the street. We fund homelessness support services in Norwich through the Pathways Norwich Partnership, which is a consortium of local charities to help prevent and reduce rough sleeping. We recognise that rough sleeping is one of the most damaging forms of homelessness and work hard to reduce the numbers of people found in our streets and the effect it has on our local communities. We are starting to see a reduction in numbers seen on our streets compared to previous years, and when persons do sleep rough, it happens for the shortest possible time so that these services can help rebuild their lives. Where aggressive begging does take place, we strongly recommend that members of the public report these incidents to the police so this behaviour can be reduced. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis, you're allowed one supplementary question. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes. Can you tell me about the extent of coordination between the Council and other relevant bodies?
Thank you. Councillor Jones, would you please give a reply?
So we work closely with the police around community safety, and we've recently established the Norwich, Safe Norwich Partnership, where that's recently started. We also work in close partnership with other agencies through the Pathways project, which involves local agencies such as Mental Health Trust, St Martin's and Drug and Alcohol Services. So we're working with people across different sectors.
Thank you. Third question is from Ms. Claire Wood. Ms. Wood, would you please ask your question?
New government policy which came in during August
August 2023 means that asylum seekers in hotels granted refugee status are being given just 7 days instead of 28 days to find accommodation before being evicted. Please can Norwich City Council tell us what plans it is putting in place to support people seeking sanctuary with this problem and to avoid homelessness? We are aware of cases of people already being made homeless, and we are expecting many more cases, possibly dozens, or into the hundreds, to find themselves in this situation.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, would you please give your reply?
Thank you for this very timely question. Our staff are part of a coordinated team of local statutory and voluntary services that are working with the Home Office's contractors that manage the local asylum hotels, and we're acutely aware of the issues raised. Initial support will be given to the refugees who are seeking alternate accommodation, and should they fail to resolve the situation, the client will need to present to the council, where we will carry out our duties to prevent and relieve homelessness in accordance with our statutory duties to all those facing such circumstances. To support this approach, the council is in the process of recruiting a specialist housing advisor to assist refugees facing homelessness.
Thank you. Ms Wood, you're allowed one supplementary question. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, so for clarity, just so we understand the problem Norwich is facing here, this change is already affecting families and could affect dozens more, as I said, who will be made homeless and they're not going to be able to work because of the chaos that homelessness causes. Given that it is a pressing problem, could you give some indication of when this housing officer might be employed and the sort of timescale involved?
Thank you. Councillor Jones, would you please give your reply?
I can't give you a specific off the top of my head right now, but I'm happy to check that and relay it to you. I know the funding had been identified and been discussed with me a little while ago, so I know this has been in process, and several officers have been updating me around this and aware this has been an issue we're going to need to be supporting with. If keen to get in touch with you afterwards and update you. Thank you.
Thank you. The fourth question is from Mr. James Hawkins. Mr. Hawkins, would you please ask your question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and good evening. This question is to Councillor Hampton. About a year ago, I asked a question to the then Cabinet Member for Sustainable Growth about the City Council's responsibilities to public transport, broadly within the Transport for Norwich framework. In his answer, the now leader stressed the importance of the County Council on such matters as the primary provider, and I certainly got the impression that he thought the City Council should take no real oversight role on the day-to-day running of transport. With that in mind, I wonder if the Cabinet Member would give her thoughts and recall her immediate reaction to the recent de facto abolition of the TFN committee by county and what this will mean for Norwich in her view.
Thank you. Councillor Hampton, would you please give your reply?
Thank you for your question, again, a very timely one. I recall that at the November 2022 meeting of Full Council, you asked for then Cabinet Member for Sustainable Growth to, quote, clarify if there is a level of misservice at which the current administration would act or at least call for action against the operator should they continue to fail on reliability, pricing or decarbonisation of their fleet, given diminishing public confidence in them, and that was in the context of buses. In his response, the Cabinet Member made it clear that Norfolk County Council is the transport authority and holds responsibility for improving the standard of transportation services. This remains the case. As was highlighted previously, we will always seek to cooperate and influence transport decisions which affect Norwich, but we need to be clear where the power, responsibility and accountability actually lies. I do not believe the comment in your question, the comments are a fair representation of what the Cabinet Member's response was or what the reality of transport arrangements in Norfolk are. Your question refers to, quote, City Council's responsibilities to public transport broadly within the Transport for Norwich framework. When the draft Transport for Norwich strategy was published in 2021 by Norfolk County Council as the Transport Authority, Norwich City Council set out its response. We called for more ambition in promoting the policies and projects needed to drive uptake of active and sustainable transport and criticised the excessive focus on building new roads. Although in some places the strategy was strengthened on account of our feedback, it still did not meet some of our key tests, so ultimately Cabinet voted not to endorse the strategy. At the same time, we made it clear that we will continue a productive working relationship with County with a view to increasing ambitions in the future. The recent news that the Public Transport for Norwich Committee, which considers transport schemes relating to Norwich and drives the delivery of the Transport for Norwich strategy, is being replaced by a behind closed doors Transport for Norwich steering group is hugely disappointing. Local people deserve to see how their councillors are contributing in these meetings, given the importance of getting schemes right with regards to safety, accessibility and sustainability, among other considerations. Openness and transparency in decision making need to be strengthened, not reduced. This new secret arrangement risks undermining public trust in projects the steering group delivers and in local politics more widely. The steering group will remain advisory, making recommendations to Norfolk County Council's Cabinet Member for Highways, Transport and Infrastructure, which is not preferable. You may be aware that at the last meeting of Full Council, June 2023, Labour's motion calling for an arrangement that would give Norwich more power and say over transport matters within city boundaries, closer to the previous joint highways agreement, which Norfolk County Council unilaterally abolished in 2018, was unanimously passed.
Thank you for your answer. Mr Hawkins, you're allowed a supplementary question. Do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I do want to thank Councillor Hampton for the response. I do appreciate the opportunity to hear her thoughts. I do share a concern over this decision over abolition. I do wonder, though, if I can draw her attention to the justification that was given for it. County Councillor Plant seemed to suggest that seemed to imply that the committee had become dysfunctional, which surely referenced an ignominious event several months ago, in which one of her Labour colleagues, in essence, vetoed a meeting of the committee by walking out in a huff over a trivial matter of a stand-in chair. So in retrospect, I wonder if she would condone Councillor Stewley's actions, and does she perhaps think that these actions, by bringing about apparent dysfunction, helped encourage the travesty of transparency that she criticises?
Thank you for your question. Councillor Hampton, would you please give a reply?
Thank you for the question and for sharing our concerns that we've got to this point with the arrangements. Let's be clear, the reason the committee wasn't working and there was political overspill and decisions weren't being made as smoothly as they were previously wasn't because of that one relatively isolated event. It was because, as is referenced in my original answer, the issues that had happened with County at first promising that the committee would be decision making, then revoking that. As it says, it's an advisory committee. They effectively went back on what they promised us in that respect. That particular meeting, as you may be aware, we have 2 spaces on the committee at the moment. It is myself and the councillor you reference. I wasn't able to make that particular meeting. It happened very soon after I took on these responsibilities from Councillor Stonard, so I wasn't there. I can't comment in great detail about what the thought process was. There was a legitimate issue, and it may well be going forward, but it should be the case that the Cabinet Member for Transport Matters at County Council chairs that committee. There were completely legitimate reasons why he couldn't be there on that occasion, but there were other indications that actually they had intended a Deputy Cabinet Member to chair meetings permanently. That was the issue. There was some slight misreporting in some places online. Would I have reacted like that? I don't know, because I wasn't there. I wasn't part of those discussions at the time, so I can't speak any further for what that councillor's intentions were, and I understand he may have effectively made the move or explained the move on the day that actually other colleagues joined him in that for whatever reason. But as I say, that happened, but there have been much wider issues with how this committee has been working and how those relationships have been, which this is not a satisfactory arrangement to us, but we will continue to try and work constructively to get over some of these hurdles and find something that works. especially from our perspective of the city, but for the council more widely too. So thank you.
Thank you for your answer. That concludes the public questions. Members of the public who are here for public questions are more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but equally you are more than welcome to leave now if you so desire. Thank you very much for your participation this evening. So the next item is petitions. There have been no petitions received for this meeting. Item 4 is minutes. I call upon Councillor Stannard to move the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of June 2023.
Formally move.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Catt to second the minutes.
Formally seconded.
Thank you. We move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 5, questions to Cabinet members. There are 23 questions from members of the Council to Cabinet members, of which notice have been given in accordance with provisions of Part 3 of the Constitution. A copy will be available on the Council's website. Members who have asked a question are permitted to put a supplementary question to the Cabinet member. Question 1. Councillor Fulton McAllister, do you have a supplementary question?
Apologies. Yes, I do, Chair. So, first of all, Councillor Giles, thank you very much for your response. I wanted to get your thoughts on the fact that the government are essentially against socialism, but when it suits corporations, it's fine. And what I mean by this is that they've decided that it's a perfectly reasonable use of public money, 58 billion in fact, 5 times the amount of the social housing budget to subsidise the private rented sector, which is obviously costing us, the taxpayers, a significant amount. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on what we would be doing differently and what the council can do to try to limit that unreasonable use of public money, so that private landlords are not creaming off the public purse.
Thank you. Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Councillor Fulton McAllister, and I largely agree with your analysis. In terms of what we're doing currently, as set out in our HRA capital programme for Norwich here in February, this Labour-led administration has ambitious plans to build hundreds of council houses over the next 5 years across 3 score, the Milecross Depot site and Argyle Street, which recently obtained planning permission. Where it is unviable to use retained right to buy receipts to build council housing ourselves, we provide grants to registered providers to build social housing. I'm proud to serve in a Labour-led administration which prioritises social housing for its residents and reduces demand on the private rented sector.
Thank you. Question 2. Councillor Peake, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Councillor Jones, for your answer to my question. I can have a supplementary. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 3. Councillor Huntley, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor, I do. Given that some landlords charge exorbitant rents and fail to maintain or make safe the properties in which tenants are living, what sanctions or actions can the private sector housing team use to protect private renters?
Councillor Jones. Reply, please.
Thank you. We have a wide range of powers we use. We start, want to work productively with landlords in the first place, but where that's not possible, we use improvement notices, and if that needs to progress, there is a financial penalty, because actually, how best to get them to change their mind, it has to be hit them where it hurts in that sense. I would like to point out a recent success where we actually fined a landlord over £50,000 for breaches. We take this very seriously and we'll pursue these as far as we need to get change and set a standard that actually you don't do this in our city. and we will pursue prosecution if that's relevant as well. So we will use every legal avenue open to us, because actually by setting these examples, we set standard, and then hopefully that will have a knock-on impact on other landlords.
Thank you. Question 4, Councillor Carrington, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I do. Firstly, thank you, Councillor Giles, for your response to my question. I do have a supplementary. I was pleased to see new upgraded tennis courts open at Alderman Walker Park and Harper Park. Could you comment, please, on the launch events which took place for these new facilities?
Thank you, Councillor Carrington. I was delighted to attend the launch events of the new tennis courts at both those parks, not this last weekend, but the weekend before. It was fantastic to see so many local residents and children from the estates along, sampling, playing tennis for free and getting coaching tips from our Norwich Park's tennis coaches. It's fantastic to have these new facilities much improved on the previous courts. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 5, Councillor Prinsley, do you have a supplementary question?
No supplementary question, thank you.
Thank you. Question 6, Councillor Packer, do you have a supplementary question?
No supplementary question, thank you.
Thank you. Question 7, Councillor Sands, do you have a supplementary question?
No supplementary, but I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for her answer, and we are very, very proud of what's happening in Bowthorpe.
Thank you. Question 8, Councillor Maguire, do you have a supplementary question?
I do indeed, Lord Mayor. Thank you so much for your full answer. It's one I'm really proud of, and I'm sure we all in this chamber are. But just a simple question. Why is it that we can make or have built these high specification houses that reduce the costs to all who live in them, and other local authorities do not necessarily do so? How can we do that?
Councillor Jones, would you like to give your reply, please?
Quite simply, we choose to, and I'd say alongside that, when we declared a climate emergency, we're also looking at the social and economic consequences for people, and these all go hand in hand, and it's about the best for our residents, and that is at the heart of the decisions we make. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 9, Councillor Lubbock, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor, and I thank Councillor Hampton for her response. It is a positive response which I would wholeheartedly endorse, and I hope that the City continues to make the case for more 20 mph speed limits in the City until such time as the whole of the urban area, the whole of the City, has a 20 mph limit. This will make it easier for motorists to understand, rather than going from a 20 to a 30, then back into a 20. And also, should enforcement be necessary, it will make it easier for enforcement as well. Thank you.
Thank you. It wasn't a question, but much agreement, so thank you. Question 10, Councillor Catt, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. Thank you, Councillor Jones, for your answer. I've been in touch about a particular case, and I do appreciate your help with that. I was surprised to hear that the housing management system was described as a market leader. Residents in my ward and across the city have been forced to wait years in some cases for some simple repairs, with lots of kind of missed appointments, lots of reports around poor communication, and that can often be put down to a kind of a housing reporting system that has some inefficiencies and has seen a significant decrease in online use, and that was kind of confirmed by some officers. Were you aware that we don't know as a council how many repairs appointments we have actually missed, and that again has been confirmed by council officers?
Thank you. Councillor Jones, would you give your reply, please?
I would say that we have an awful lot of work in progress around NCSL and seeing some really positive results, improvement in repairs KPIs. So in terms of what we're doing, I think there is improvement. There is always room for improvement in how we engage with things, and it is something I'm seeing really positive changes in terms of where we're going with this. It's something we're going to be discussing further, and We always want to make it as easy and simple for our residents, and that's something I'm committed to. And in terms of customer contact, my colleague is not here tonight, Councillor Oliver, similarly, we want people to be engaged with our council in an effective way and to get timely response. So we're working on it, and bear with us, and happy as ever to receive any casework you want me to follow up. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 11, as Councillor Haynes has sent apologies, there will be no supplementary question. Question 12, as Councillor Young has sent apologies, there will be no supplementary question. Question 13, Councillor Hubkner, do you have a supplementary question?
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Stoddart for his response, and I'm pleased to hear that work is underway on a new waste strategy, which hopefully will help the council catch up with the nearly 2/3 of English local authorities that do better than Norwich in terms of the percentage of household waste sent for recycling, reuse and composting. I would like to know what disaggregated data, including data that compares areas relying on communal bins with those that don't rely on communal bins, tell us about areas for improvement and whether you would be able to share this data with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Well,
sorry. So would you give a reply?
Yes, I'm happy to make comparisons with other areas in the country. I think that's really a helpful thing to do. I do believe that Brighton and Hove have a common bin system in place. And I think it's quite helpful for us to compare the performance of Norwich City Council with Brighton and Hove, where the Green Party has been in power for twice over the last 12 years. When the Greens were in power between 2011 and 2015, recycling rates fell for 4 years in a row to 24.6%, keeping Brighton and Hove near the very bottom of the league table for England. After Labour took power in 2015, the turnaround in performance began, and by the period April to June 2017, Labour had improved recycling rates performance to 29%. That's an almost 5% improvement in just 2 years under Labour. Sadly, the Greens retook control of the council in July 2020, and they failed to make further real improvements. So Brighton and Hove's performance was the worst in East Sussex. So Brighton and Hove Council now achieves a recycling rate which is 15% less than the national average. Norwich achieves 4% less than the national average and 2% less than the Norfolk average. Well, as I say, we're not complacent, and we will always strive to improve our rates locally. We're not really minded to take lectures on the matter from the party opposite, which has no experience of delivering recycling rates of any kind, let alone improving them. When we look at the record of the Green Party winning control of their flagship council, Brighton and Hove, on 2 occasions we see their record is abysmal, putting them near the very bottom of the pile nationally. I'm not proud of the fact that there are 2/3 of councils doing better than us. I think the Green Party has absolutely nothing to be proud of at all about that abysmal performance, and I really strongly suggest that you get your own house in order before pointing a critical finger at us for our far, far better record of delivery.
Points of order, Lord Mayor. The councillors here are not on Brighton and Hove Council. They represent Norwich and are fully entitled to criticise the administration.
I think you've asked a supplementary question, and the leader has given an answer.
And that wasn't a point of order, Councillor.
It's not a valid point of order either. So.
Thanks.
Question 14, Councillor Champion. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor. I was just curious if Councillor Stannard could explain to me why the Planning for the Planet has got no evidence to support it. I've been looking through the evidence base on their website, and I find this incredibly curious. And furthermore, if it is profoundly undemocratic, will he be contacting Labour councils who have signed up to advise them that they should unsubscribe?
Councillor Stoddart.
Well, it's up to each council to make its own decision. And sometimes when councils make their own decisions, they're abject failures, as you can see in Brighton and Hove. you can see all the work that we're doing with jointly with other authorities around the environment. But actually, the problem with planning for the planet is actually we have local democracy here, and we have to take our planning policies through local consultation. That's how it works. So, from my perspective, for us to sign up to off-the-shelf policies which are proposed by a third-party organisation without taking that through local democratic processes is profoundly undemocratic. And that's what we are elected to do, and what we're elected also to consult with our local public on it, and that's what we should do. And if we then find that our policies are consistent with planning for the planet, so be it, but that's the way around we do it.
Thank you. Question 15, as Councillor Galvin has sent apologies, there will be no supplementary question. Question 16, as Councillor Francis has sent apologies, there will be no supplementary question. Question 17, Councillor Osborne, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, well, I don't actually. I'd just like to thank Councillor Hampton. It's good to see, accepting of positive and constructive suggestions.
Thank you. Question 18, Councillor Worley, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor, and again, thank you, Councillor Jones, for the response that you gave. I'm really pleased to hear that there's been some positive progress on these particular cases with the fire doors. I am just aware that this isn't an isolated incident, and that I'm aware of cases of residents who have been waiting years for replacement doors. So I just wanted to check what measures the council is planning to put in place to make sure that residents who do experience issues like this will have a timely response and a timely resolution in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Hi, Steve. I'd really appreciate the name or contact details for any residents that are waiting that long, so that I can follow this up, please. I believe that we've had a programme in place around the fire doors, and that's sort of reaching its conclusion in terms of being able to resolve that. So we have a very clear plan around that, and I'm confident in how that's going to be delivered. But please do pass me on that information for those residents you're mentioning.
Thank you. Question 19, Councillor Calvert, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you. First of all, thank you ever so much for the answer, I do appreciate it. The question seems to have been slightly misinterpreted or misread. The question refers to all residents, appreciating that steps are being taken to ensure that council tenants have secure bicycle storage. My question asked about all residents, including those who are not council tenants. Just as garages are available to all residents, council tenants are otherwise for the exclusive storage of motor vehicles. Will the council consider cycle provision for all residents?
Thank you. Councillor Hampton, will you give your reply, please?
Thank you for supplementary. Yeah, maybe there was a bit of ambiguity in the question, but the answer does also cover the obligation of developers to provide cycle parking as well, and perhaps it was the council bit, garage bit, that confused it a bit. Yes, we do provide them for all residents, but there's an order of priority, so tenants first, or I think blue badge holders first, tenants, etc., down to anyone at the bottom, residents, then anyone. So we do make that provision. I think arguably cars are more difficult for people on average to store than bikes in the city. Not that many people have driveways and garages, etc. A bike can be easier to store. I wouldn't rule out us looking to enhance cycle storage elsewhere in the city where there's demonstrated need, and if you have areas you want to suggest, please do. I haven't been made aware of any yet, and then we can look into who would be the most appropriate person to take that on, whether it should be the council or whether we could be working with partners to try and get more of that provision.
Thank you. Question 20, Councillor Price, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Giles, for the answer. Very much appreciated. In your answer, in the final bit, you mentioned that this maintenance programme is monitored closely and the council is satisfied that it's being followed. I don't feel that that maintenance programme is providing the adequate level of work to maintain that area of the city to a decent standard. So I would like to invite you to come and take a walk about with me so we can have a look, and then you can potentially address those maintenance schedules and get the improvements that everybody sees. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Giles, would you like to give your reply, please?
Yes, firstly, I'm happy to do that, and secondly, our citywide services officers in environment services sample audit hundreds of sites across the city each month to assess whether the contract is being performed to a strong standard, and I want to take a particular look at the location you identified when the next data set comes available.
Question 21, Councillor Fox, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor. Councillor Jones, thank you for your answer. It's greatly appreciated. My question is, how is it decided which areas receive more or less garden maintenance, ground maintenance, and where is it possible for councillors and tenants to view that information? And I wonder if you would also be willing to come and view Canterbury Place with me, because it does seem to be, in a state of neglect at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, would you give your reply, please?
I actually did relatively, it's a couple of months since I've walked through there, but I do walk through there occasionally. But happy to visit again and look forward to when we've got a programme restarting with state audits. So I will check where that is in terms of those happening, and I think it'd be really helpful to join you when we do that. In terms of the programme for it, I don't have the exact details of how those are planned, if I'm honest, off the top of my head, but I can get you that information. But I think it's looking at the need of each area, and we have an awful lot of estates across the city. We have to balance that resource across all of them. I have areas in my own ward that and they all need equal attention. But I'll get you some follow-up information, and please drop me an email to arrange a time for a visit.
Thank you. Question 22, Councillor Schmierer, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you very much to the Cabinet Member for their response. And I do appreciate the Council has brought forward deployable CCTV cameras, and I look forward to extra cameras coming online, as you state in your answer, in the future. However, I suppose I'm not actually asking for an expansion of the CCTV coverage per se, just a restoration of where we were about 5 years ago, so that areas like King Street, like Burr Street, areas that have been blighted by antisocial behaviour, and it comes up regularly when I chair SNAP meetings or attend SNAP meetings, so that they can feel safer. So I suppose my supplementary question is, when can residents suffering from crime and antisocial behaviour in these areas I mentioned and elsewhere expect to get cameras again, please?
Councillor Jones, would you give your reply, please?
So the deployment of our CCTV cameras is generally based on discussions with the police and information from councillors. Keen to explore areas. We've gone from a position where they weren't all deployed, they are now all constantly being deployed, which I think is a positive step forward. Keen to expand them and continue to, and it's because actually they can have a positive effect in terms of people's sense of safety for the community, but it's also about the community engaging with them. So actually in terms of reporting information, and if there's a concern, so that people know to look at that as well. So we've got to use them in a sort of, we've got an awful lot of stakeholders to involve when we're putting them up. So I'm happy to discuss those areas with you and with the community safety team, but I think it's part of a sort of broader discussion and also involving the police. We've got a new Chief Superintendent, so probably worth having a discussion with him as well, but we can take that forward outside the meeting.
Thank you. Question 23 is Councillor Ackroyd has sent apologies. There will be no supplementary question. So we now move on to item 6, the first of the reports this evening, update to the capital programme. I call upon Councillor Kendrick to move item 6.
Thanks very much, Lord Mayor. I am pleased to introduce this report, which updates the Council's capital programme. Council is asked to endorse the recommendations as a proposed increase of £220,000 to the previously approved capital programme. These additional sums are proposed to be added to the capital programme in the financial years 23-24 and 24-25 to enable the project for the upgrading of the Magrock room technology to proceed and to develop phase 2 of the scheme to replace our HR and finance systems. Both IT improvements are essential to support modern ways of working and deliver efficiencies in the way the Council operates. We're also asking to note the carry forward proposals for financial year 22-23, resources that were not spent but continue to be required in later years, which have now been reviewed by the Chief Finance Officer. This would have added around £60 million of expenditure to the agreed programme, although the expenditure accelerated to financial year 22-23 on the line home projects will be offset against this to leave a £40 million net enhancement of further investment in our city. I would ask the Council to agree the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. Call upon Councillor Mike Sands to second the item.
I formally second.
Thank you. Now I'm going to invite group spokespersons. Councillor Price, please, for the Green Group.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for bringing this report today, Councillor Kendrick. Just a few brief observations on this small change to the capital programme. It seems prudent to make the investment to improve the technology in the Mancroft room. One would question why we haven't done that same amount of improvement to this chamber. I'm sitting here with my computer on the lowest setting on this screen, so in the hope that it doesn't die, its battery doesn't die during the course of this meeting. Of course, I have no Wi-Fi to check in fact while this is going on. So I would encourage this council to get on with it and to get on with getting the right technology in this area. Both rooms are historical and sensitive, and so there's no reason to stop that process. In fact, the CCTV, the broadcast technology here is inadequate and is nearly impossible to watch back, making it very difficult for members of the public trying to follow this meeting to be able to engage. So I would recommend we do that. The other changes around IT, it's always prudent to invest in IT in terms of making investors safe. We've seen notable cases of major IT failures undermining council budgets. Birmingham recently issued their 114 notice, citing, amongst other things, failure with their IT. So I'm sure that the Audit Committee and the Cabinet will be monitoring the impacts of these IT changes and getting that assurance that it's not putting the council at risk. And I'm hopeful that that is the case. I draw the Council's attention to paragraph 10b on page 41, and I turn to my knowledgeable friend, Councillor Kendrick, when I read that in the event the current provider has now advised that as part of its own restructuring proposals, the service will not be offered after April 24, although we've asked for an interim solution to be in place until July 24 to allow the internal team and system changes to be made. So I'm interested to understand what actually happened there. Did we make a contingency? Has that now expanded? Is that where some of the costs are coming from? Could you explain to us why there is a disconnect between the end of the contract and this requirement for an extension? I was rather hoping that the Lord Mayor would be up there today, because I think this is his area of expertise, and I'm sure he would have had some better points to raise than I. But I hope that Councillor Kendrick can enlighten us and also provide us that assurance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Sadly, I can't be joining in with the debate today. Councillor Lovett, did you have anything you wanted to say on this?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. No, I agree the changes to the capital programme. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any other members wish to speak on this item? Councillor Mike Sands.
Just a very, very minor point. For anyone who has trouble keeping their laptop charged in the council chambers, you can get a device like this, which also, if you have a car, can be used to jumpstart your car in the event of a flat battery. Very inexpensive, less than £20, which, if you're interested, they are available.
Thank you for that, Councillor Sands, although I'd just like to say we don't wish to have any cars in the council chamber to test the jumpstart. either. Any other members wish to speak at this stage? No, in which case I'll bring Councillor Kendrick again to respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Obviously, in regard to the technical point that Councillor Price raises, I would suggest he context the RIT officer, Julie Medler, and I'm sure we'll be delighted to explain what the situation is at present. But I would, as I say, urge the Council to agree these recommendations.
Thank you. So we'll now move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate. That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, item 7, Annual Report of the Audit Committee 22-23. Call upon Councillor Price to move item 7.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It is truly my honour to help support this council as the chair of the Audit Committee. I think over the years that I've been involved, we've done some really good work, and I appreciate the Cabinet members' attendance and also the tremendous support that the Vice Chair gives the committee with his experience to it. The report has obviously been circulated, and I'm sure it made interesting reading for you all. So there's a few points that I'd like to bring out. Page 56, number 29, and I'll just read it for you. The Council has identified a need to strengthen competencies and make improvements in the way in which contracts are managed effectively to drive out efficiencies and service improvements. This will continue to be an area of internal audit focus, given recent limited assurance opinions for the management of significant contracts. This reflects the committee's concerns about contract management and policies and procedures. So in this previous cycle, we had conducted some large ticket item contract audits, and disappointingly, they came back with limited assurance. That's the work of audit, that's the work to help identify weaknesses, and of course, then the Council has responded positively to those challenges, put in mitigations, and helped to improve and minimise those risks moving forward. However, that's an ongoing process for the Audit Committee and also for this Council, and we're not there yet. But I welcome the fact that we can work constructively across the floor in order to identify these issues and to produce mitigation. I'll move on to paragraph 31. Halfway, the committee has noted that there is no internal audit review plan in 23-24 for the outcomes of the local government peer review conducted in Jan 23. But there is an expectation that some of the concerns raised may be addressed through the internal audit reviews of corporate governance and Line Homes Limited. So the local government peer review was an excellent endorsement of the work of the Audit Committee, as well as other areas of the Council. And from that work, we can see that there are still a number of concerns around our corporate governance structure and the governance that surrounds our wholly owned companies. To not sound like I'm repeating myself, these challenges are still ongoing, and there are still a number of those areas that need to be addressed. The Audit Committee will continue through this cycle to support that, and I look forward to reading more final reports and to seeing what other steps this Council is going to take to improve the governance areas there. But I think this Council should be proud of its from the actual peer review. And it shows that we're on the right track and we're moving in the right direction. But work still needs to be done. Moving on further into the report, paragraph 38. Members expressed some concern that the internal work plan had a delayed start in 21-22 due to the new internal audit arrangements. And this had meant that some internal audit reviews had to be deferred to the next year. Audit is a difficult market. We used to have a contract with LGSS. We now are in the consortium. That helps make a saving to this council. It also provides us specialist audit skills, and those are very useful. It was disappointing that we missed a quarter, but at the end of the day, the internal audit manager has to be able to sign off their audit plan, their annual audit report. They need to be able to provide that assurance, otherwise they simply can't sign it off. So although it wasn't the best cycle for audit, it still gave us the assurance we needed as a council. Moving forward, because the consortium is already set up and it's moving forward, we shouldn't see that problem occur again. So I hope that we have no interruption to the audit cycle, and I do hope that sincerely we can put more hours into the next cycle and the cycle we're in currently in order to get more auditing done, because myself and Councillor Driver are very excited by audit. Moving on, moving on to 43, paragraph 43. This is the second time that the Audit Committee had undertaken a self-assessment exercise facilitated by the Head of Internal Audit, and as a result further actions have been identified to ensure full compliance with best practice. So in the years that I've been on audits, there's been a number of concerns that I've raised at different times, and sometimes we're a listening council and sometimes we're not. And by doing a kind of independent process, cross-party, really helped to put politics to one side and to help to really identify the challenges that we have. So everyone participated excellently on that. It really did identify the weaknesses we have, and we keep striving to improve, because that's one of the tasks I've set myself is to make sure that we are doing the best audit that we can possibly be doing. So I appreciate the members of the committee in engaging in that process. Part of that process, and it continues in 44, was that we appointed David Harwood, and he's our independent person to the committee. This is something I had been calling for a couple of years. I felt it would have helped the committee to have an independent person supported with their specialist knowledge and skills, and I'm glad again through the kind of self-assessment we concluded that that was a positive step forward. We've done that ahead of other councils. It's now becoming a mandatory thing, and so we got a good opportunity to find out who was out there before all councils were scrabbling around trying to get themselves an independent. So I'm very pleased with how David settled in. I think he's adding value to the work of the Audit Committee. Paragraph 44 goes on to say that the committee suggested that it would be useful to have a second independent person and specification to stipulate that accountancy skills would be desirable. With David's internal audit experience and having somebody with accountancy skills, I think that would be very complementary to the skills on the committee, give this council more assurance, and I'm pleased to say that that has been agreed and that we are proceeding to advertise and employ someone to join us. The quicker that happens, the better. As the chair, it would be nice to have that independent voice there to help us regulate the work we're doing and give us some additional verification. So I really welcome that move. Paragraph 45. The Audit Committee, following its self-assessment, recommended the introduction of a Treasury Management Committee. Obviously, that's now been happening for a while, and I appreciate all members that are involved in that. It was a slight governance issue that we didn't really have oversight of it as a council. I found it incredibly interesting. I've learned a lot, and I would like to see more treasury management understanding across a greater range of councillors here, so that when we come to setting our budgets and looking at our treasury management policies, that we can have a more deeper informed debate about how this council regulates its spending. So I would encourage that other members, get some training in that area. But again, another real positive identification through the committee's work. Paragraph 47. The council has 2 wholly owned companies, and it is the view of the chair, that would be me, that the audit process needs to change. The audit of the group accounts, the audited accounts of the wholly owned companies, does not subject the accounts to the same level of detailed audit as the council's statement of accounts. We're a modern council. We have wholly owned companies. This is an essential part of running a service now. The reality is there is inherent governance risks around having independent companies making decisions on behalf of the company where we have the liability. And by not having those accounts separated and analysed by this council, I feel is a weakness. It's a control weakness for this council, and I would suggest that we try to find a way around that. So that's some food for thought for others here. Paragraph 52, the committee noted at its meeting in November 22 that there were 2 internal audit reviews from 21-22.
Councillor Price, just to give you a heads up, 30 seconds left.
Okay, so there's lots of really good stuff here, guys, but paragraph 55, during discussion with the external auditor explained that the statement effects of climate-related matters on financial statements and value for money arrangements, and said that this was an area of increasing work for audits. This council needs to start to get the grip of climate adaptation right now before it becomes an audit risk, and that is the warning from your audit chair. Thank you.
Perfect. To the second, actually, so thank you very much for that. I call upon Councillor Driver to second the item, and I'm sure we're all keen to hear your audit excitement at the chair.
If I could laugh, I would do, but my chest hurts, so I wouldn't. Yeah. Audit committee is one of those committees I do enjoy being on, a matter of fact, and the amount of information we receive on audit is not readily available anywhere else in the council. And I do ask that all other members who are not on audit to either come to our training days and learn what we actually do, or to turn up to a couple of our meetings. I'm really glad that Councillor Kendrick, the Cabinet member, is always there at our meetings and there to answer questions, and that is very good. I'd like to thank all the officers, all the work they've done over the year, putting this report together, especially Jackie Rogers, the committee secretary. I have no idea how she managed to write down and get all the minutes correct and put out for the agenda for the following year. So a lot of support for officers that way. I mean, at the last meeting we went through the finances, and it was great to hear that this council is one of the best councils in the whole country running at the moment with their finances. Our reserves are in a good state. Our money, our what they call it, cash is okay, and everything seems fine. I did ask if I could have a few bits more money to spend in my ward, but I'm not sure if I'm going to get that until the budget come up in April. I have to have words with my leader about that. And where our chair has said about these reports, there need to be more work done in these reports, are not there yet. I would be surprised if we said, yes, fantastic, cut off. We need to say there's more work in here, if not these will get left behind, and there should be more work to be done in these on years and years and years and years and years to come. You're never going to close them up, so there will be work to done. That's what the audit committee should be looking at and reporting back to Cabinet so they can understand our concerns. And I think Cabinet have come back and took their concerns well and put some changes into the working ways of the council, so we are making a difference. And I support anyone coming on to audit committee. It's a good little old committee. We only meet 4 times a year, but those 4 times a year are intense. So you need to come to training. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Driver. Councillor Lubbock, please.
Can I be exempt on my age? Recently, local government finances have been in the spotlight, with Birmingham City Council being the latest and largest local authority to issue a Section 114 notice, indicating that they cannot balance their budgets. There are further warnings that in this time of reduced budgets, high inflation and higher demand for services, other councils will follow. It is for this reason that each year the full council receives this report from the Audit Committee, detailing its work throughout the previous year and satisfying the full council that the officers and members have worked thoroughly, diligently and to a high standard, discharging the authority that this council places upon them. I believe the work to be very wide-ranging, complex and onerous, but absolutely vital to this council to ensure that we continue to balance our budgets. And so, taking into account what Councillor Price has just said, I would like to thank Councillor Price, officers and members for the report and for their commitment and hard work throughout the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lubbock. Any other members who wish to speak at this stage? Councillor Mike Sands, please.
Just to reiterate Councillor Lubbock's thoughts on the Audit Committee, it is a very, very hard-working committee, and members have been submitting extensive questions to officers seeking answers, and and we're very, very pleased with the development progress we've made during audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sands. Any members wish to speak? No? Thank you. In which case, Councillor Price, would you like to respond?
Just simply that I appreciate the hard work that everyone puts in. It is a non-political committee, and we're all here, whatever our political persuasion is, to do the very best by the people of Norwich. And the audit is one of those committees where we can really execute that function with politics to one side. I will thank all members of the committee and all the officers involved. It is onerous in some ways, but it is a vital job, and we all you can see that there's a lot of camaraderie within that committee, and so we will continue to do that on behalf of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate. That is unanimous. Thank you. So we now move to item 8, the annual report of the Scrutiny Committee. As the former chair of Scrutiny, it is my pleasure to move item 8 in the absence of the Scrutiny chair this evening. And before I do that, no doubt the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noted that the chair's forward in the Scrutiny Committee report is last year's forward, which came to light just as this meeting was beginning. So what I will now read out for you is the actual forward that didn't make it in due to a document creation issue, and so that will be corrected and placed on the website and in the minutes. Otherwise, you might have thought that perhaps last year's chair just decided to resubmit the previous year's work, which really wouldn't be on. So I would like to begin by thanking all of those who've been involved in the scrutiny process during the last civic year, particularly those officers and members who engaged so enthusiastically with the scrutiny process. Their collective effort has been hugely valuable to our work. The scrutiny year began by considering the outcome of the select committee that looked at fly tipping and communal bids. Committee members serve on select committees outside of the main scrutiny meeting, and one was convened to look at fly tipping and communal bids, an issue that was introduced by members of the public from West Pottergate area during 21-22 civic year. Following some delays, the committee made a number of recommendations to deal with the issues these issues of blight communities, all of which were accepted by Cabinet at their July meeting. In October 2018, the committee conducted a significant piece of scrutiny on county lines, and the October meeting presented an opportunity to engage with further discussion as to progress in dealing with this issue in the ensuing 4 years. With the cost of living crisis impacting heavily on many city residents, the committee used the November meeting to consider debt advice and support services, particularly how these services provided by the council and partners can stop people falling into debt. A number of recommendations were made to Cabinet and were accepted in full, with others being ratified at Budget Council in February. The January meeting considered financing for renewable energy and energy efficiency, looking at options to support the Council to achieve its target of carbon neutrality by 2030. The recommendations that the committee made to Cabinet were in turn referred to the Climate and Environment Emergency Executive Committee, a Cabinet advisory panel with a specific brief of addressing climate issues. Welcoming refugees and asylum seekers into Norwich and overcoming obstacles to their smooth integration was considered at the March meeting. But prior to that, a survey of partner agencies had been undertaken, and members visited the Zainab Cafe to look at their work supporting refugees and asylum seekers. Additional scrutiny on this topic is being undertaken in the current civic year. Throughout the year, the committee also looked at various standing items that feed into the transformation and budget setting process and business plans of the Council's wholly owned companies, with members making recommendations to Cabinet that help shape and strengthen the work of the Council. Thank you. So I now move on to calling Councillor Fulton McAllister, who will second the item.
Formally seconded, Lord Mayor, reserve the right to speak. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne, would you like to speak on behalf of the Green Group, please?
Thank you. I'd first of all like to thank Councillor Wright for excellent chairing over the last several years, in fact, as long as I've been on scrutiny. has always been scrupulously fair and committed to making sure that scrutiny works to make the city better, which is what it serves, what it's there for. Councillor Wright mentioned the work on refugees, which for me, and I think for many members, was a standout piece of scrutiny. It was developed by a visit to the Zainab Cafe on Hall Road, and we worked with local people to assess what the council was already doing, what was already going well, and where there were possible gaps in provision that could be covered through additional recommendations. I'd like to thank the refugee groups who assisted with that very, very helpfully. As members will be aware, however, that there were questions raised by the representatives of Zainab about the recommendations that were ultimately adopted by Cabinet. So I hope that in future there'll be a clear process for Norwich residents who have contributed to scrutiny to review and contribute further to the recommendations that are then considered by Cabinet. James, Councillor Wright mentioned the fly tipping task and finish group. Actually, a slight correction, Councillor Wright, that it was originally requested by a resident of Canterbury Place in May 2019, my first act as a councillor. I recently spoke again to that resident actually just last week and told him that finally, that task and finish group had resulted in some recommendations, including reducing or abolishing charges for bulky waste collections for residents on low incomes and exploring fly tipping amnesties. So I hope that those recommendations, after all the work that's gone into reducing them, will be adopted by Cabinet. Finally, I have to raise concern about the issue of whipping on the scrutiny committee. In one of the recent scrutiny meetings, a memo was seen signed by the Labour Group whip, Councillor Kevin Maguire, that recommended, and I quote, if there is any discussion, a member of Labour proposes a move to a vote. The same memo also recommended measures to prevent bringing joy to the opposition, again a quote. Scrutiny is meant to be non-political and should not be whipped. It is a sorry state of affairs if Labour councillors on scrutiny are whipped to turn any discussion that may prove uncomfortable to their own administration. I hope that the leader of the council and the cabinet member will condemn the use of whipping on scrutiny here and now.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Any other members who wish to speak at this stage? Councillor Fulton McAllister.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So while I was Vice Chair of the Scrutiny Committee and essentially chairing my group, I can quite happily say that we were not engaged in whipping. I obviously don't know about the incident. I think it was one of the Scrutiny Committee meetings that I wasn't present. However, what I can say is that my own conduct in the Scrutiny Committee has always been scrupulously fair. It's been sometimes cause of frustration to cabinet members, including agreeing with a number of those recommendations which were made at the refugee scrutiny meeting. And obviously, I know during that refugee scrutiny meeting, there was discussion over who would be elected chair, and I think that it was a testament that the opposition did not put any candidates forward, and instead I was able to chair that meeting because certainly that meeting, one of the last ones that I remember clearly, and I've had a baby since, so apologies for my fuzzy memory, but there was certainly no whipping in that meeting and the other meetings that I recall. Obviously, I can't comment on the meeting you're speaking about, but I believe those comments would be shared by other members of scrutiny.
Any other members wish to speak on this item? Councillor Peake.
Going back to whipping on scrutiny, I've been on scrutiny for 2 years when I first became a councillor, and I cannot recall any whipping going on at all, so I don't know where that information comes from.
Councillor Stannard.
Yeah, so I was aware of this allegation, and I was also aware of the behaviour of some Green members of scrutiny. who apparently were trying to take photographs over people's shoulders of the notes they had in front of them, which is disgraceful. And along with the sort of antics we saw at the last cabinet meeting, does show that we need a little bit more discipline and respect actually for process and procedures from the Green Group. And that's something I will be discussing with your leader when I have my next meeting with her. And I'm not aware of any whipping going on for Cabinet, beg your pardon, for Scrutiny Committee. I know there are prior discussions. I know people talk about the questions they might like to ask, but that's just a normal preparation for a discussion. And I know then people ask whichever question they want to in the debate, be it one that they thought of before or one that they thought of in the debate. And I think it's generally fairly free-flowing like that. As far as I'm aware, that's how it works.
Thank you. Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you very much. Well, certainly as a Cabinet member, I've always appreciated the very robust nature of the members of the Scrutiny Committee, and that includes actually questions from the Labour Group as well as the Green Group. I certainly do not know of any occasion where a Labour Group member has been disciplined for somehow disobeying a whip on the Scrutiny Committee. It just has not happened. So I think, for example, I attended the meeting which dealt with the refugees, which my colleague Adam Giles also attended, and also the Elections Act. And I think it was very positive. I think the way that the Cabinet's actually dealt with the recommendations of the Scrutiny Committee were also very positive. So I think rather than sort of muddy the water and sort of put down accusations, I think we should actually applaud what has been done by the Scrutiny Committee and congratulate its members.
Yeah. Councillor Jones, please.
Oh, Councillor Kendrick's just got in before me. I'd just like to say, as a Cabinet member, thank you to Scrutiny, because it's always interesting to hear the recommendations, and it's been an opportunity for complex issues to be discussed in an interesting forum. And whilst I know we're talking about the previous civic year, I was lucky enough to attend Scrutiny last week, and was really grateful for the questions asked and the really interesting input. And I think it's a very useful process, and as a Cabinet member, a really good chance to reflect on things. So just, yeah, thank you for everyone's input across the chamber in it.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think it's interesting that, Councillor Osborne has raised an issue around whipping and scrutiny. I don't know how long this has been going on, or what have you, even when these particular meetings took place. I've never sat on scrutiny, I've never sat in for anyone on scrutiny, I've never been on the Scrutiny Committee, but it is a non-political committee. I have seen evidence of whipping. I have seen the paper that is being discussed here. This is a fact that the leader needs to acknowledge. Rather than to deflect about what the Greens may or may not have done, that's fine, you can do that. But Councillor Osborne asked you directly to kind of condemn that and to make sure that doesn't happen. And I don't think there is any other response than to condemn it if such things happen. And I'm telling you, I've seen the evidence, it has happened, it does happen, and I don't think it would be right to continue to deny it. But let's work positively. Let's talk about the good work the committee has done. But let's have the right governance in place. Let's not have it as a political committee, and certainly let's not deny the truth. Thank you.
Any other members? We've got Councillor Driver.
Yeah, I'm on the Scrutiny Committee. This is getting silly now. We're talking about something completely different here. And I'd like just to go straight to the vote on the Scrutiny yearly report. Thank you.
So we've got a request to move to the vote. Do I hear it seconded? Yeah, second. In which case, do we have to do all those in favour of agreeing to move to the vote before they're moving to the vote? So all those in favour of moving to the vote?
Yeah, you whipping them up.
You told them not to.
Thank you. Can I have some order, please? So all those in favour of moving to the vote, please indicate. Thank you. Any against moving to the vote? Abstentions moving to the vote? So we're moving to the vote. So we're now at the vote on the annual report of scrutiny. I can't remember if we've ever had a move to the vote on the annual report of scrutiny. All those in favour of accepting the annual report of scrutiny? That is unanimous, thank you. So, one of those slight quirks of local government, we didn't want there to be a vote, but when we got to the vote, we were happy to all vote in favour of it. So thank you very much. Well, we now move on to the fun part of the evening, where we get on to some motions. So motion 9A, very timely to talk about buses this week, I think. So we have a motion on bus fares, Norwich bus fares. So I call upon Councillor Stannard to move 9A.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Council, the Tories don't care about public transport services for the masses. They're addicted to the private car and building ever more roads to accommodate it. We see this locally as the Tory County Council relentlessly pursues, for example, the Western Link, while ignoring the needs of the city for the implementation of this council's radical strategy for sustainable transport. They pursue housing developments in rural communities where there's insufficient economic and social infrastructure, where there are few jobs, and where there is very sparse, unreliable and expensive public transport. And thereby they bake in a reliance on the private car. The Tories have also pursued a disastrous ideological approach to public transport policy. Deregulation and a decade of decline have meant that thousands of bus routes have been lost in England since 2010 in the pursuit of profit rather than excellent services. At the same time, passengers have seen the cost of bus fares rise well above wages and inflation. As a result, prior to the pandemic, passenger numbers were at a 20-year low. When Boris Johnson launched the Bus Back Better strategy, his government promised great bus services for everyone, everywhere. But in June, the Tories broke their promise to vast swathes of the country and admitted that they won't see a single penny of the funding promised to improve their shockingly bad bus services. The Tories in Westminster and at County Hall want you to put up with shockingly bad bus services, and for too long they've allowed local services to decline and fares to rocket. In this city, as part of our transport strategy, we need affordable, reliable, high-quality public transport. This is vital for the good of the environment, of course. We're all agreed on that, but it's also vitally important for the health, economic and social well-being of the poorest in our city. We know that low-income households are the most likely to use buses, and research by the RAC Foundation has shown that since 2013, the cost of bus travel has risen by a greater extent than all other forms of transport. It is the poorest without access to other forms of transport who have borne the brunt of these increases, driven by deregulation and a lack of long-term funding. We also know that any reduction in bus fares will be of greatest benefit to those who are least well off. Capping fares at no more than £1 a day would save the poorest 20% of households in England 0.8 billion a year. That's collectively. Making bus fares in England free would save the poorest 40% of households 1.8 billion a year. Making all bus fares free would cost 2.3 billion a year, which compares with current government funding for new road schemes of 27 billion. That would pay 27 billion for entirely free bus travel for the next 10 years, reducing car journeys and reducing CO2 emissions. So perhaps, Council, we will soon be rid of the dirty, polluting Tories at Westminster. We can but hope and work for it. The next Labour government will end the spiral of decline under the Tories, which has seen passengers come last. Britain is the only country in the developed world where private bus operators set routes and fares with no say from the public. When in government, Labour will put the public back in control of public transport with powers to set bus routes and fares. In parallel, we will bring railways back into public ownership, including cooperative municipal ownership, because they're another important component of public transport. And it is, as you say, Lord Mayor, very timely. We've seen this week the fantastic work of Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Manchester, in taking the bus service there back into public ownership. He said deregulation did not work on buses and many other things as well. The mantra that the market is the answer to everything has been disproved by bus deregulation. Council, our poorest and most vulnerable citizens rely on buses for their everyday lives, to get to work, to get to the doctor's surgery, to get to the shops and so on. Yet services are unreliable and expensive, with the cost affecting the poorest disproportionately. And of course, the Tories don't care. This council has a radical transport plan to create a cleaner and more sustainable city, built in part on affordable, reliable bus services, and therefore I commend the motion to you.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Hampton to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Stannard for bringing forward this motion tonight. It's one that's been on the agenda for some months now, always getting rolled forward when we overrun with these meetings, but at least fittingly, we're hearing it now during National Bus Month, and as has been touched upon, the developments in Greater Manchester, which I'll come back to briefly. Free bus fares for Norwich is undoubtedly an ambitious proposal, and as has been mentioned, there would be other projects and work streams that need to take place alongside this to make it feasible and sustainable. This would include full decarbonisation of the bus fleet, infrastructure upgrades, and of course appropriate devolution of resource and powers. As the text of the motion demonstrates, and Councillor Stannard has already explained, tickets being capped at a more affordable rate will also make a notable difference to the poorest households in society. So, in a sense, we're wanting to aim at the moon and land on the stars with this motion. The social and environmental benefits to making bus travel truly affordable could be immense. There are clearly economic implications too, but as the motion has pointed out, the cost of free bus fares across England, the cost of this versus what the government is already planning to spend on roads and what it's willing to give in tax breaks to the richest in society, it shouldn't be a debate. This is clearly a case of priorities. Free bus fares puts money back in residents' pockets and would help incentivise people to make the shift to using public transport, reducing the number of private vehicles on the roads and reducing emissions. This is backed by research from the National Audit Office, which showed that more than half of motorists have said they would use their car less if public transport was better, with the fares being too high being cited as the most common reason motorists are hesitant to make the shift. The Labour Party nationally is already committed to the biggest overhaul of our bus system in 40 years, devolving powers to local areas so they can influence bus routes and set fares at an affordable rate. This week, under the leadership of Labour Mayor Andy Burnham, locally controlled buses returned to Greater Manchester after 37 years of fighting deregulation and privatisation. Having brought their buses back under public control, Greater Manchester will now have the opportunity to properly plan its network, coordinate timetables and implement a clear, affordable system of fares. This provides a blueprint for what could happen across the rest of the UK and what could hopefully be achieved even more readily under a Labour government ready to back councils through this process and not frustrate it. So thank you to Councillor Stannard for his work on this, and I'm more than happy to second it tonight.
Thank you. And I'm going to call on group spokespersons. Councillor Osborne, will you speak for the Greens, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I won't spend too long on this topic because I think it's one we all agree on. I'd like to thank the Labour members for bringing it. I'm sure we all have residents, as I do, who tell me that they avoid using the bus as far as possible because it's just too expensive. And I know that from experience as well, having avoided it. And £2 bus fare is a really positive initiative, and I absolutely agree with the points in this motion. One thing I'd add to it is that it needs promotion. Lots of people don't know about the £2 bus fare initiative at the moment, and so it needs better promotion. That's on the county council as well. I think there are a few points where the motion could go further. For example, looking at free bus use for particular groups, with those people on low incomes or under 25s, as is the case in Scotland. It's not the first time where we can learn lessons from Scotland. Manchester, for example, has been referenced several times already. BBC yesterday was describing that as revolutionary. I don't actually think that public ownership of public transport is revolutionary at all. It's common sense and it's the most efficient and affordable and high quality way of providing that low carbon transport. And I hope that Labour colleagues will be urging their national party to support full public ownership of buses at a national level as well. I would like to to ask whether Labour members, whether their party actually supports, would actually scrap the government's £27 billion road programme, because as far as I'm aware, Keir Starmer has not committed to scrapping that. It wouldn't be the first time that he hasn't committed to scrapping some of the Tory proposals. Tangentially, I note also that the £27 billion capital funding, whereas we would need revenue to support reducing bus fares, and we need revenue proposals as well, such as raising funds through a wealth tax nationally or road pricing locally. Finally, I'd like to stress that affordable buses are only effective if there's the infrastructure to allow buses to travel safely and quickly. We talked earlier about the Conservatives' decision to disband the Transport for Norwich committee and make those decisions behind closed doors, which is going to be a blow to effective scrutiny of implementation of new bus infrastructure. I have to say also that I was disappointed to see Councillor Mike Sands opposing a new bus lane on Dereham Road. I hope that all councillors will support bus infrastructure as appropriate.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The Liberal Democrats strongly believe in the provision of an affordable, reliable and high-quality public transport system for Norwich, Norfolk and the whole of the country, not just in terms of helping low-income households, but in terms of tackling climate change, congestion and air quality, all of which have an impact on low-income households. However, I do think calling for all bus travel to be free is pie in the sky for this government and probably the next. And I presume Labour will have this free travel policy in their manifesto? I doubt it. The research that's been mentioned in the motion calls for a reduction in the cost of daily bus travel, but falls short of saying it should be free. Like this motion, which was first presented in March this year, the research probably is a bit out of date, having been published in October 22. Since then, there has been and currently is a reduction in bus fares with a £2 cap on the cost of a single fare. So perhaps the government are beginning to understand the importance of public transport to people's health and the economy of the country. Any government which decides to make substantial investment in bus travel will realise the enormous impact on productivity, health, air quality and congestion, and will begin to address the climate change and economic crisis, levelling up and the access to education, and so many other problems we are grappling with today. There is, however, I feel, very good news for Norfolk. £50 million of funding was awarded to the County Council last year, which was predicated on their ambitious bus service improvement plan, the BISP as it's called. And this is to deliver improved passenger confidence in bus services, a green and sustainable offer, and a simple and affordable fares and ticketing. In order to deliver the improvements using this money, the county has formed the Norfolk Enhanced Partnership with bus operators. And this has resulted in physical improvements, like we've heard, with the Dereham Road bus lane and other bus lanes, with interchanges being improved, with creation of travel hubs, and even the improvement of ticketing and fares. And they're working towards discounts for under 25s. And of course, the arrival this autumn of 70 new electric buses, an electric charging depot at First Roundtree Way premises, I think you're pretty hard on the County Council. They have been successful in bringing money to Norwich and Norfolk, and bus services are improving, albeit slowly. They're getting some of the infrastructure in place. But they have, and to think that we're going to have 70 electric buses, I'm very impressed. And if you want more, I think you're very ambitious. But I think Norfolk County Council, give them their credit, are doing quite well. But do we know enough about it? I don't think we do. We don't talk about buses in here because we understood from Councillor Stannard, but look, this isn't the authority, this isn't the place to talk about it. Well, Councillor Hampton she just said, we've got to be clear on whose responsibility it is. But anyway, I'm glad we're talking about it. We ought to have a briefing report of actually what's going on at county to inform us so that this council can reach out and help our residents understand what's going on, that there are low prices, that there are increased services, and that you can get up to Cromer pretty quickly on a bus these days, running every half hour. There's very good things going on. We ought to get out there and use the buses and encourage our residents to do so. When do we last promote anything on our website or in our Citizen about buses? As you mentioned, it is special bus month. Are we doing anything about it? No, we're not. But First Online are doing things. They're inviting people to get out to Wyndham, to use a gym out there, working in partnership with other people, telling people about the buses to use. We just sort of say it's all bad stuff, it's all terrible. We're not actually out there promoting it, trying to get involved. What about reaching out to the county and asking for a briefing about it and trying to get more involved? You can't just keep saying, oh, we can't do this and we can't do that. I think there's a lot that we can do.
Can you bring your remarks to a close, please? You've run out of time.
But I do think a commitment to promote better bus usage and make buses more reliable, which is what people want, reliability, improved frequency, and that would be a much better achievable aim than free bus fares. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members who wish to indicate at this stage? Councillors, take in this order. Driver, Mike Sands, Jones, Schmurer.
Yeah, buses we talk about buses a lot in Langdon. I seen one the other day, that's unbelievable. I went down Mansfield Lane and then turned around and came back again. That's the first one I saw it all. It's just some of my residents used to have buses go up their roads and round the corners and come back down another road, and the bus company just don't send buses up there no more. And that's just out of order while they're not doing this. And it's all right you to say that the buses are too big and they can't manoeuvre around the roadways where the cars are parked on the road, because everyone's got a car now and the estates weren't built for that. Where Julie said it's fantastic news we've now got 70 electric vehicles coming in the autumn. It's good news we've got 70 vehicles coming in the autumn. How many small ones have we got who can go up these roads? 11 small ones. Well, I hope we have the whole 11 into Lakeland so we can reimburse our residents like you used to have the bus to school pass. I'm old enough to know what the old bus system was like. I mean, I went to Sheffield 40, 50 years ago, and where I was getting a bus from outside the old Mount Marion pub, the tree house, what it was called now, down to the St Stephen's, that's £1.50. A lot of money in those days. I hopped on a bus just outside Stocksbridge to go into Sheffield, and that is about 11 miles. And I hopped on there with my wife to be, my first wife, and I said, 2 to the city centre, please, and he went 10 pence. And I went, pardon? And I gave him 20 pence, and he went, no, 5 pence each. And we were paying a fortune here. Now, this is all because the Sheffield City Council had control of their buses, where Mrs. Thatcher took the law away for them to have all this. We should bring that back. The Manchester's now done it, so I hope everything will start working properly. In the advertising, I mean, on every single bus you see at the moment, it says anywhere £2. And I know it's gone up the end of this month, it'll be going up to £2.50. Now, let's plug the £3. People can't afford £3 just to go from Langdon down to the city. I mean, it's cheaper to get, if it's 3 or 4 it's cheaper to get a taxi to go up outside your door and drop you off outside where you want to go, instead of walking for half a mile to try and find a bus stop and hoping that the bus will turn up, because a lot of them are breaking down at the moment. The bus company is short-staffed, and I know that for a fact because my daughter's actually a bus driver in Norwich now, and she has been for over a year. And the amount of buses bus down, and the drivers don't turn up, and you stand there in places out in the county waiting for that bus to turn up, and they don't turn up. You've got no hour, maybe 2 hours for the next one to come. That's not good enough. And the county council will be responsible for a lot of this.
Councillor Dry, you've run out of time, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. But Councillor Mike Sands next, please. 3 minutes.
It's a great pity Councillor Osborne isn't appraised of the facts concerning roadworks throughout Bowthorpe and Dereham Road. The reality is Highways did not conduct a proper consultation, nor even a proper modelling of the situation, and their proposals are going to lead to increased congestion along the road, with no guarantee at all from First Buses that they will increase the number of buses along the route, which can be done with the existing road and can be done negotiating the Wending roundabout rather than a costly junction 70 metres from the existing roundabout, which again is going to add to congestion and to increased emissions and pollution. So, yep, I certainly welcome a motion which gives the potential for us to negotiate more fully modifications and extensions to the bus routes, and my proposal was in fact to extend the 23-24 route so it encompassed Bowthorpe, and before going through Cossey, negotiating the Wending roundabout without the need for costly roadworks or bus lanes, costing some £4 million I might add, which could have been spent elsewhere, and this would have better served the communities both in Cossey and in Bowthorpe. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, please.
I suppose I just wanted to reflect on the bit about local areas and local knowledge planning them, because when having lost some routes in my own ward and having to try and negotiate with the bus company and getting them to understand that actually asking people, particularly elderly residents, to walk an extra 200 metres to a different bus route is significant, because actually that's a long way. Actually, they might have been able to only get across the road from the supported living accommodation they're in, and actually that gave them freedom, and taking that route away is cutting off a lifeline. And it's our communities, and they're the kind of the quiet bits that get forgotten, that it's easy to take a route away from, because it's, oh well, there's another one nearby. But actually having buses that come so close to you was really crucial, and it feels like we've lost more and more. In the 20 years I've been in Norwich and lived in quite a similar area, we've lost a number of local routes, and it's really restricting people's access who don't have cars and can't afford cars and shouldn't have to have them. They have buses and they need those local amenities.
Thank you. Councillor Schmierer.
Yeah, thank you very much for bringing this motion. Obviously, an issue that's very close to my heart, and indeed, I'm sure everyone in this chamber. I just want to quickly just pick up, if I may, on Councillor Lubbock's point that this may be pie in the sky. I am perhaps an unworldly optimist. I am, after all, a Green Party councillor. But I am reassured that somewhere in the world, these things are happening. Free public transport has happened and has been shown to be achievable, and that's Luxembourg, so not too many miles away from where we are here in the UK. And Germany, for example, only recently introduced a monthly travel permit for €49 a month, where you could use trains, apart from the intercity trains. You could use trams, you could use buses, you could use every kind of public transport to get around. That could be maybe a nice step in the right direction.
Not free.
No, but as I said, it's a step in the right direction. And previously, Bologna said that it actually reduced bus and train fares in peak times because they said it was a tax on work. That's something we could maybe learn from, especially when we have a look at the astronomical train fares down to London from Norwich, for example, at peak times. But ultimately, we need reliable buses and trains and indeed public transport that runs throughout the day, that connects communities like Lakenham and communities around the city and indeed around the county and indeed around the country, all day and indeed all night. And simply, if the buses aren't running, people will not take them. We need to know that there is a bus that is nearby, that is accessible, as Councillor Jones said, every 10 or 15 minutes, that will turn up, that will take you to your destination. And that will stop Britain being a car country and Norfolk being a car county, as has previously been said by other councillors at County Council, sadly, as a seemingly fait accompli that will never change. It can change, it must change, if we are to deal with the climate crisis. And here in Norfolk, we have a lot to learn from cities like London and Edinburgh, where buses do seem to run like clockwork, where they are cheap, where they are accessible and available and supplemented by other forms of public transport, whether that be trams, whether that be trains, whether that be underground. But this cannot and must not be the preserve of national capitals. It must be universal in this country. It must be available to all. And I look forward to the day when we are not just seen as a provincial backwater with a poor public transport offer. Indeed, we should be, as a county, leading the way, and I'm really glad that this motion is being brought here. And I really hope that one day a government, in the not too distant future, will share those sentiments.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
Thank you. I see time's against us. When my mum was bringing myself and my sister up in London, she didn't have a driver's licence. We certainly could never have afforded a car. Incidentally, her dad was a bus driver in London and was very proud to serve the London residents. We would wait for hours for buses. Buses would not turn up. I remember so many days standing there in the cold. You know, the fares went up and up and up. It was terrible. Price point is important, but also frequency, as Councillor Schmierer has said. Buses running all the time, to time, night and day. And it's not just about buses serving the most in need, it's about converting everybody to buses. So the price point is important, but I'm doubtful that making it free is actually achievable. Sorry, Martin. Because the figures used here is based upon current bus uses. So if you suddenly made something free, lots more people would take it, the cost would be quite different. As far as I'm aware and what I've heard from the Labour Party, it's not Labour policy to renationalise the buses, okay? But that's simply a much more important policy, and when everyone comes to vote at a general election, we'll be looking for points like that, rather than, dare I say, gimmicks. To summarise, the powers you're talking about are coming through the devolution deal to the county council, and so it sounds like this council is supportive of that potential devolution deal, because it will give you the powers to set routes and set fares. I'm very concerned and very sceptical about this devolution deal, and I wouldn't want to see this council kind of agreeing to support it based upon a few extra powers. What we need is a government that's going to renationalise the buses, make the fares cheap, but make sure those buses are reliable and clean air to breathe, clean to use. And when you do that, when you make the bus service good, which you did in London, you have mass adoption, and so we need to see that. And it's not just about Norwich; it's about all the residents in Norfolk as well. So let's look wider as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. I've got Councillor Kendrick, Councillor Packer, and then Councillor Giles.
Can I actually say, I'm a bus user myself. I no longer have a car, and I use exclusively the bus service. I do agree with Councillor Price. The bus service in London was once expensive and not particularly frequent. I can assure you that's now completely changed. I think that's down to the nature of the government in London and the excellent work that the Mayor of London has actually undertaken. I've been down there a couple of times. I must admit, as an ex-fellow in London, I much prefer Norwich, except for the public transport, because the public transport in London is now absolutely excellent. My son actually lives in Greenwich, and there was literally a bus every few minutes. I mean, you had to wait about 10 minutes. Along the tube, it's even less than that now. I remember as a boy going from Kingsbury Station to the cities, and there might be an underground train about once every 20 minutes to overcrowded. Now they're about every 3 minutes, and that's about as good as you can get with the signalling system. But if we had kind of public transport system here in Norwich that they would have in London, there would be a vastly better take-up. My friend here from Lakenham, and I'm at the other end of the 39 bus route from himself. I couldn't agree with you more. Only today it was just another cancellation on the 39 bus. You often have to wait an hour or so. It is very, very disappointing. Yes, I think I'm very glad to see that the bus fares have gone down, and I actually myself pensioned it when I went to Cromer. It cost me just £2. But if we could just at least reduce the costs and improve the reliability, I think you'd see a massive transfer from car usage to bus usage. Thank
Councillor Kendrick. Councillor Packer.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would encourage Council at Lubbock not to go all the way to Wyndham. Instead, get a bus down to the city centre and use our excellent leisure centre on Riverside.
I'm not going anywhere.
Thank you, Councillor Packer, for the Riverside Leisure Centre plug. Councillor Giles.
The Norman Centre is just as good as well. But sadly, as my colleague has intimated, the bus service from Mile Cross and Lakenham must be the worst in the city. It's absolutely appalling. It's virtually impossible to get a bus to either after tea time. I know, up until about 5 years ago, you used to be able to get bus service to the Pulling Park estate in Cromer Ward. There's no bus service to the Pulling Park estate, despite it being one of the most deprived estates in the city. Although they scrapped the bus service to Fiddlewood, but thankfully my Labour colleagues campaigned to get that partially restored. Anyway, the point I wanted to make was in response to Councillor Price. I think it is Labour policy to allow district councils to municipalise local bus services again. I don't think buses were ever nationalised in this country. I don't think we want Whitehall civil servants setting bus routes. I think we want councils most close to their local residents and communities to determine.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Champion.
I caught a bus here today, and it only cost me £2 in November. The cost is going to be going up to £2.50, I believe, and the price freeze will be for the next year. I would be curious if the Labour group will write to Mr Starmer himself and ask to ensure that within the policy there will be a price freeze on buses if there is a Labour government, and maybe reduce it down to £1 or £2. I would be the motion itself, which you brought forward, is writing a letter to somebody who will ignore you. And so if you are saying that you're going to form a government, which is the insinuation of what's being said, then surely the better person to write to is your own government to ensure that your own policy reflects what you're saying in this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment at this stage? Normally the Lord Mayor doesn't join in, but I just want to say, listening to Councillor Kendrick sort of reminded me of my time in London, where I used to live in Tottenham. I used to jump on the 73 at the Tottenham bus garage, and it was great because it was route master buses, and you could leap on and then leap off while it was making its way down past Euston Station. So that was good fun back in the day.
Good times.
Good times, yeah.
Good times.
Anyway, so we've had a very good debate about buses. So I'm now going to call on Councillor Stannard to wrap it up.
I will try and thank you, Lord Mayor. Where to begin? I've been taking copious notes. So, in no particular order. In terms of writing to Keir Starmer, we don't need to. We're already in part of the Labour policy process, so that's something we are doing anyway. So we've got a direct line, so we don't need to pass a resolution to write to Keir Starmer. In terms of the Devo deal, let's just get rid of that one as well. We're not supporting the Devo deal at the moment. We're engaged in the process. We're engaged in discussions, but we are expressing grave reservations. And I don't know who told you that that might not be the case, but they were wrong.
Good to hear that.
And we certainly won't be bought off in the way that you suggest. I mean, some of this is also about the Tories neglecting everywhere else other than the London and the home counties. And the anecdotes that we hear about certain times in London. Well, I remember Ken Livingstone's Fairs Fair. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. The transport was reliable and the fares were heavily subsidised. That was under the GLC. It was when the Tories abolished the GLC and abolished that. That we got the experience that's been recounted by some people of poor public transport in London. And hey presto, we get a Labour mayor in London and it improves rapidly. It's interesting in terms of neglecting everywhere other than London and the home counties. I've got a quote here again from the BBC. A representative for the Greater Manchester Combined Authority said the number of bus journeys in Greater Manchester dropped from 355 million, yes, there is 6 noughts on it, at the time of deregulation to 182 million in 2019, while the number in London where services were not deregulated roughly doubled in the same time. That tells you something about Tory policy and their priorities, their regional priorities, regional investment priorities, and political priorities. In terms of free bus travel, I have to say, there are countries not too far from here which are radical and have made radical decisions, and I think we need to be ambitious. There's nothing wrong with being ambitious and setting your sights high. That way you'll achieve the best possible. If you limit your ambitions, you'll never achieve the best. You'll limit what you go for, and that's not my style. I don't think it should be our style either. Making all current journeys free would cost less than 10% of the road building budget. It's not a lot to ask. Not a lot to ask at all.
Sorry, Councillor Stoddart, you've run out of time now.
Have I?
Yeah.
I commend this motion to you.
Thank you very much. So we will now move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate. Unanimous. Thank you very much. So, bus reference coming in my left ear over there. So as we've reached the 2-hour mark in our meeting, I need to ask if any of the remaining items can be taken as unopposed business. Does any member wish to oppose any of the remaining items? No. Then thank you very much. The remaining items will be taken as unopposed. I declare the meeting closed.
Thank you.